Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the EarthStream webinar, where we are joined today by our guest speaker, Julian Smith from Polestar Industrial IT. So thank you very much, Julian, for your time. And it must be said, we're very lucky to have an expert like yourself with us today, talking about unlocking agility within factories with OT and IT integration. So just before we hand over to Julian, just a bit of information on what we do. So EarthStream are a global recruitment company, essentially providing sustainable energy talent solutions across renewable energy, power and grid, and industrial technology. I'm one of the regional directors and kind of head up our industrial technology team here, which essentially encompasses both industrial and process automation into these types of industry sectors. Being specialists and experts within our markets, what we do try to do is to kind of give back to our candidates and followers as often as we can. So if you haven't already done so, then please ensure you scan the QR code or follow the link in the chat to download our global salary guide, which really explores the biggest trends and insights from last year and this year so far. So again, thank you very much, Julian, for joining us today, and I will pass over to yourself now.
Thanks very much, Charles. Okay, let me just get this lined up. Okay, is that visible?
Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic. Okay, so yeah, so great. So hi everybody, it's great to be here today, and thanks very much to the kind folks at EarthStream for inviting me to present to you. So my background's been working with internet networks and OT networks for over 25 years, since I started out as a cybersecurity engineer. And my role at Polestar Interactive and Polestar Advisory Services is to help manufacturers be more productive and help them with adopting new technology, and by doing it in a safe and secure way. And we mostly work with manufacturers, but we also have worked in utilities and transport industries too. So today I'll be using examples from manufacturing, but a lot of these examples and stories also apply to other industries too, as a lot of them have similar challenges around things like sustainability, compliance, energy costs, supply chain issues, of course, and skills, which is also a big one at the moment, and cybersecurity as well. And most of the reports and white papers I've read about digitization offer real practical advice for implementing projects, but at CXO level, I haven't come across a great deal of useful and pragmatic information on strategy. So hopefully this presentation will be useful to decision makers and influencers. And if you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to post in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation or take them offline. So we've worked in some very old facilities, and we've helped our customers build brand new ones in the UK, EMEA and APAC. And when it comes to deploying new technology, I like to start with the end in mind and then carefully plan how we're going to get there. Sometimes ripping up the rule book and starting from scratch could be a valid approach to agility, but going from a sprint to building a business making cars could be extreme, but it can be done. And some of you may have seen this video of drone footage filmed at Tesla's Gigafactory 4 in Berlin. I think it's a fantastic video in its own right, and to me it's a great example of agility in practice, and also in the form of a factory workthrough. Hopefully you can all hear and see that. Yeah, great. it's only about halfway through when you start seeing a lot more people. So I think I'll stop it here. And I think if you consider where Tesla is now compared to the competition, they bought what they could do in-house. They digitized as much of the onboard hardware and software as possible, and they reduced the number of components and vastly shortening their supply chain, so leaving the established car makers scrambling to compete. And I think it's worth noting that Tesla had a 10-year mover advantage. They didn't have the legacy OT systems or the assembly lines that have hardly changed in the last 100 years. So that was a lot of sunk cost and technical debt that Tesla don't have to carry. I think it's interesting as well that if you look at a press article from Reuters this week, it reveals that other car manufacturers are following Tesla's lead, and assembling a car using traditionally assembly line techniques takes many hours. Using casting technology, gigapresses can reduce this to minutes, and Tesla's got 14 of them. And the Italian company IDRA that makes the casting machines is also selling these to Ford, Hyundai. Volvo and Toyota are also ordering them too. So they're saying that casting machinery can now make a third of a car body in 3 minutes, which normally requires 86 parts taking hours to assemble. But starting from scratch in the way that Tesla's done is a challenge for most businesses. So an operations director recently asked me a really good question. Do I invest in more robots in the OT, or do I buy a new cloud-based ERP system in the IT world? Which do I prioritize? What's the quickest and the best ROI? And how do I plan this? So can IT help? Well, we know that free access to data provides the digital transformation to occur. We've seen this happen in the enterprise with the shift to cloud computing services in the last 10 years. And these kinds of use cases are really common, quoted in the industrial data space. By following the principles of IT adoption and lessons learned, is there a plan that OT can follow? And if so, what is that roadmap? Starting from scratch, though, I don't think it's that simple. If we follow IT, we'd be in a world of Industry 5.0 by now. And clearly, we need to justify why we should adopt early and explain what the benefits we get from investing IT-OT integration are. And furthermore, how does a company do that in an agile way? And where do they find the people to do the work? It's interesting as well, if you look on Tesla's website, they're advertising job roles for manufacturing IT engineers. That's the job title, who can migrate them from Wi-Fi to private 5G for their AGVs. And that's running on Profinet and ProfiSafe, and they're actually stating that in the adverts. But when evaluating what benefits an IT-OT integration project may bring, we found that it might be helpful to consider the following. So first of all, most importantly, safety. Everything needs to be built with safety and security in mind. And in fact, it needs to be baked in, whether it's a greenfield or a brownfield site. We also find scalability. We want the technology we work with to be good enough to last 10 to 20 years. POCs and local projects are not a full tier solution. 25,000 assets or data points might only cover 1 or 2 large factories. And then what about the other 50 factories that you might have? Or what about all the assets that you service for 100 customers if you're a machine builder or a vendor? Now, which do you choose? So taking with some of our integrator partners' experience is showing that only 5% of the data that's needed to drive decision making is really needed, and the other 95% may not be relevant at all. So finally, future-proof. Focus on the end game. It's about analytics now, but the future is about control, and whether that is from the cloud, the edge, the floor, perhaps with autonomous capabilities. So you need to put the systems in place now in order to benefit from those 5% improvements as you grow more familiar with the technology. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, though, for doing this, despite what some vendors may claim. So if we start small, do we know where we're going to end up when we get larger? And can data actually predict that? Some systems don't have the capability to export or import data, either for analytics or controls, and may need to be retrofitted or to be adapted to convert industrial protocols to IT protocols, of course. And the rush to the cloud can become very expensive. Customers I'm talking to at the present time are taking some of their systems out of the cloud now and putting back on premise. So to be fair, it's not the case for most of them in the pre and post production stages. But when it comes to IT/OT integration, operations is the biggest challenge, and this is at the production stage. IT or information technology can make problems harder to solve. Systems are becoming more complex and complicated to manage, and that doesn't make acquiring data from legacy systems or closed systems or insecure systems any easier. So the takeaway for me, and this is based on many hours of meetings with customers, is that it's not a technology problem, it's an information management problem. Top-down thinking and ground-up experience requires real experience and know-how. So merging IT and OT departments and roles and responsibilities is one approach we've seen, but a more practical approach, I think, is for IT and OT to adopt what Microsoft call a shared responsibility model. And in the OT world, shared responsibility needs to extend to the factory floor and not just the cloud. So IT wants to know about all of OT assets for orchestration, monitoring, and auditing purposes, and that's usually it. For the OT folks, the asset is a machine, and that's either in a cell, a line, a rig, a substation, or can even be a laptop. And the usefulness of the asset is understanding who uses it, how it's used, or what it actually does. It's like what actually produces or what it controls that's important. So it's at the end of the day, it's a tool or it's tooling, and it's used to make a product, or in utilities, what it actually controls that's important. Some systems may never have been designed to share information with other systems. And for example, a cell may have been designed and installed to operate autonomously by the machine builder or the integrator. And the end user doesn't have the ability to access the system to acquire data or audit the assets. And we find that quite often. Security as well, with IT and OT security standards being so different and will remain so. From a management perspective, it makes business sense to share some of the controls as well as security operations and the incident and security responses between the IT and the OT departments. But because IT and OT systems need to be secured in different ways, sometimes it's better to disconnect them from each other and then implement trusted and untrusted zones on each side of a logical and organizational perimeter. The degree of agility becomes a cost versus risk business decision at that point. McKinsey point out in their article on convergence in 2022 that the challenge that many companies face is the pressure to prove that these efforts pay for themselves by avoiding data leakages or security incidents. As security incidents become more prevalent, this mindset can pose an increasingly unrealistic barrier to effective security. And we're seeing that a lot now. Integrating the factory for agility, integrating the factories for agility, these challenges are fairly common across industries and sectors. So by solving them, companies desire to produce more, waste less, become more time efficient, break down siloed thinking, and communicate more freely across departments. If you have one or two factories, it's not going to be difficult to solve these challenges. But once you scale up and you have dozens of facilities and factories, how do you stay agile? Standardizing OT across all of them isn't always practical. So here's an example. If you look at the blueprints Microsoft are releasing with Microsoft Cloud for Manufacturing architectures, there's a consistent digital thread that can be followed from end to end. Microsoft isn't an innovation company, of course, but they do know how to run operations, and their business was built on doing one thing very well, running businesses. For those companies that don't have the investment and deep pockets of Elon Musk, this architecture might be a roadmap to help you to figure out what to prioritize next. And again, from McKinsey, introducing an agile operating model states that reducing time to market of user demo ready prototypes or minimum viable products can be 50%, from 6 months to 3 months on average. If you look at this example or this interpretation of the Purdue model, most of the changes happening in the world of IT right now are happening in layers 4 and above. And it's so much easier to integrate and migrate enterprise IT into the cloud, of course. But there's also another win, and it's much easier to find and work with customers and keep them informed using cloud applications like Teams, Salesforce, and ServiceNow. And this is why most of the digital transformations are happening here. It's a quicker win, and it's not surprising that Microsoft are promoting these products to businesses. What I've also mapped out here is the Microsoft manufacturing product offerings in the left-hand column, but also added some of the focuses that organisations like Make UK and Mesa International are researching at the moment, and what Make UK are representing for manufacturers, what they're hearing from their end customers. It's not a surprise that of the high priority is now the lower hanging fruit is being implemented. But of course, production operation challenges need to be addressed still. Would a comprehensive approach such as Microsoft Cloud for Manufacturing provide the means to implement change across the entire business, not just in customer and product innovation, but in an agile way? And what I've highlighted in green here are the primary focuses for Make UK and map to those across to what Microsoft are offering in their architectures, but also what some of the major focus groups are looking at right now. And it's surprising actually that a lot of the issues that I thought, like supply chain, transport and logistics, etc., and energy, aren't of the highest priority right now. If you look at the technology solutions then that are available in operations layers 3 and downwards, there's a lot of legacy code and technical debt in some of these OT applications, which I'm sure some of you will recognise. And a lot of them have decades of code in some cases. There are some of the newer vendors that are challenging the established vendors, and we're seeing traction with these, and some of them are worth a serious look. Some of the cloud tools like Site Machine and Cognite, and then also some of the on-premise tools like Ignition, which Tesla are big users of, and that also runs on the Microsoft Windows stack. So Microsoft Cloud for Manufacturing can provide a model for not only analytics and orchestration, but also a framework for designing, implementing, and managing operational software with services such as Microsoft Security Copilot helping out on the security side. But going back to Tesla as an example, it might be worth considering the idea of starting from scratch as something that you should do, and perhaps not what you could do. And some of the reasons for that, I'll come to a case study with one of our customers next. So with this customer, the challenges have been migrating some of their systems back out of the cloud onto on-premise. A lot of it has been down to some of the unforeseen costs in moving to the cloud so quickly. In IT and OT, there isn't one tool that does everything as well, they've found. There's no Swiss Army knife for IT-OT integration. Orchestrating existing tools or deploying new tools and tooling, whether legacy or brand new, and having the ability to deploy and manage the software and hardware is that critical path for IT-OT integration. And the great advantage of the cloud is agility, but from a cost perspective and visibility, it's also great too, at least in some of the early stages. The challenge is, though, is in securing it, authenticating with it, architecting it, and then operating it. It brings a huge amount of exposure and risk, and having to deploy a lot of different third-party solutions to operate safely and securely. So using that Purdue model, the layer 3 is a boundary between trusted and untrusted layers, and this changes depending on what side of the fence you're looking at, of course. 4 is untrusted for people in 3. 3 is untrusted for people in 4, and that's something we hear a lot. You can actually view it from both sides. So using the cloud to connect the two together and avoid permanently connecting IT and OT is very difficult. But thinking about it, they only need to work together when needed. And we're seeing a lot of that trusted, untrusted zones appearing. So really, agility is about being able to recognize hybridity and when to cloud first for customer engagements with new products, new innovations, keeping in touch with them, and then cloud second when running production operations. And for me, agility is really about thinking about IT, but then acting OT. So thank you very much. Hi, Charles, I think you're muted. You're coming across muted on my end.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Julian.
I can hear you now.
But yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, Julian. Very insightful, and certainly very interesting that the example that you used about the gigafactory in Tesla with Berlin, because gigafactories is actually one of the areas that we're specialising here, not only working with Tesla at their gigafactory in Berlin, but also other gigafactories such as Northvolt in Sweden as well. So yeah, very, very relevant and very interesting. So just wanted to hand over to anybody who has any questions for Julian, whether you would like to ask any questions now, or whether you would like to post them in the chat, or approach either Julian directly or ourselves after the call. If anybody doesn't have any immediate questions, then as I said, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Julian after the call, and we'd be more than happy to help. But thank you very much again for your time and your insight and expertise today, Julian.
No problem. It's a pleasure. Thanks, Charles, and thanks to the folks at EarthStream. So and Exceed, of course, as well. So and look forward to speaking to you guys soon. All right. All the best.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.